We're ready to check out the next clip, which is the recent one. So this is about 4 minutes. This is about 4 minutes. But Sheikh Yas, and I'm using the version that I first saw on Twitter. I think it's a Muslim channel about the Quran or something like that. I forget where the channel is Quran Talk. I don't know if that's a Muslim channel or non-Muslim channel. Oh, Quran Talk. They had the hashtag Quran Alone. So they might be a Quran only channel. So they might actually like what he's saying about the Hadith. Oh, they're actually they're posting behind veils videos too, which is against Muhammad hijab stuff. So okay, so this sounds like, again, I'm just looking at the title and a couple of the videos here, but looks like they're Quran only Muslims, and so they don't like a lot of the Dawah guy nonsense, and probably not terribly big fans of the Hadith. So anyway, but I downloaded the video from that, so they actually have the words at the bottom and stuff like that, the subtitles. So we'll go ahead and check that out. Everyone ready? AP, be prepared. You haven't seen this, have you? Have you seen this clip even?
No.
Be prepared to have your mind blown at the fact that Yasser Qadi is honest for 5 seconds again. No, he's honest for 4 minutes, 4 whole minutes. That's a record for Yasser Qadi. Here we go.
My preliminary conclusion is there is no middle ground. And historical critical method and isnad analysis are two diametrically opposed ways of looking at early Islam and reports, and I don't find much commonality between them.
What happened to his voice, man? Is he trying to be masculine or something?
I have no idea. But so guys, he's saying there's no middle ground. They're just completely opposed ways of doing things. The historical critical method, that's what historians use. And then isnad criticism is the Muslim method. And you in theory, I guess, try to reconcile them or try to bridge them. And he's saying does not work. You kind of have to pick one based on which hat you're wearing at a given time. But let's see.
As of yet, obviously in small areas, yeah, but overall, two diametrically opposed epistemologies. That having been said, therefore, one will have to navigate the religious side of things if you are a believing Sunni, Hadith believer, in a different epistemology. And when you are arguing in the academic world, you'll have to use a different epistemology. So in some areas, there's good, healthy overlap. In some areas, we'll politely agree to disagree. And in some areas, they're diametrically opposed. This is my preliminary analysis, and I would love to be proven wrong. And I would love for somebody to come and say, no, you are absolutely incorrect. And we can prove hadith via the historical critical method. And this is how we do it.
Spoiler alert, that's never going to happen, Yasser Qadi, because your hadith methodology is garbage. So no one's ever going to refute what you're saying right now, namely that they're diametrically opposed ways. So it's never going to happen. What will happen is they'll try and shame you and threaten you and so on and destroy your career, because that's how things work in Islam. So they're not going to actually refute you.
That's what I would do.
They'll just try to shame you into keeping your mouth shut for the rest of your life, which tells us all something about Islam. So thank you for the education.
And I would literally thank that person and be the first to buy the book and love to see it. As of yet, though, I'm a little bit pessimistic and I don't see there to be much of a commonality. So we're going to have to simply say, if you believe in the, that the Sunnah has been preserved by the Hadith, you're going to have to follow a certain epistemology, a certain paradigm. And if you are, like, as you're aware, and you're an academic channel, right? You're well aware, nobody in the academy affirms the Muslim Sunni science of Hadith.
Did you catch that? No one in the academic realm affirms that this is a good methodology that should be taken seriously, right? Now, isn't that interesting? Yeah, I mean, it's not like, oh yeah, it's a minority of academics who take our methodology. No one No, once you get out of the Muslim mindset of like a sheikh and what he says, once you get to the anything more critical, no one takes this seriously. Zero. Interesting.
Epistemology, a certain paradigm. And if you are, like, as you're aware, and you're an academic channel, right? You're well aware, nobody in the academy affirms the Muslim Sunni science of Hadith.
Ouch.
Nobody. It is
Ouch.
considered to be completely discredited. I'm just...
Wow, man. He just has to double down with the
That's
wording.
what he said. That's what he just... Everyone, that just happened. You are not imagining this. You are not dreaming. Allah's not tricking you into believing that that just happened. That really happened.
Wait, we got to play it again, man.
Like, can you play it again so people don't miss it? It's very important.
We can play it 100 times. We could just spend the rest of this live stream. We got other stuff to look at, but as far as I'm concerned, we could spend the rest of this live stream replaying that right there. It's considered completely discredited by actual historians, real historians. People who are trained historians. They look at that methodology and they think it's a joke. It is a complete joke to them. And Yasser, we've known that. Yasser Qadi just admitted it. Thank you, Yasser Qadi. You're worth every penny.
Affirms the Muslim Sunni science of Hadith. Nobody. It is considered to be completely discredited. I'm just being factual. I'm describing. I'm not saying which one is right or wrong. I'm just saying the max you'll get, like Harold Motsky and others are going to say, well, like, as you're aware, and you're an academic channel, right? You're well aware, nobody in the academy affirms the Muslim Sunni science of Hadith. Nobody. It is considered to be completely discredited. I'm just being factual. I'm describing. I'm not saying which one is right or wrong. I'm just saying the max you'll get, like Harold Motsky and others are.
What's up?
We have said this forever, haven't we? I mean, lots of us have said this forever because, and Muslims keep coming with this whole thing. Oh no, you don't even have a chain of narration. Whereas we in Islam,
Yeah, that's Sajid.
You
don't even have the isnad, man.
Yeah, you ain't got the isnad, man. But it's like, dude, this is something important and something significant in Islam to Muslims only by Muslim standards. We have said this forever because there are so many aspects, and I guess you could write this down. You could break this down very nicely. This brings to mind there was a book that I read quite a while ago about Hadith methodology or Hadith science, written by a Muslim scholar, and it was a very good way to have a very quick overview to understand how Hadith science works. You could actually write a book briefly explaining why Hadith science is discredited and complete nonsense and doesn't work outside Islam. As a Muslim, yes, it is powerful, it's good, you can totally believe it, you can totally buy it, you can run with it. However, you can't sell it to non-Muslims because it comes with too many criteria that require you to be a believing, faithful, trusting Muslim in order to accept the hadiths and their authenticity as they were graded within the so-called Islamic science. You have to qualify hadiths as authentic or good or reliable or inauthentic or weak, depending on what other Muslims have said and how they evaluated the Muslim narrators, how they accepted certain people for their morals and dismissed others for their simple beliefs and such. You know, these are and that is just the surface. There are so many problems with it. You would never accept these, the Hadith methodology, the Hadith sciences, in a proper secular historian context or anything like that. You have to rely on Islam. So when you start analyzing it from a proper perspective, without the Islamic bias, it all falls apart. And that's what academia does. Academia puts the Islamic bias aside and evaluates it on its own, secularly, and it falls apart, and he knows it.
Learning the hard way. What were you saying, Hatun?
So when apostate prophet says that, he's Islamophobe. When Robert Spencer says it, he's Islamophobe. And then the things Robert Spencer is being saying for God knows how many years. Now Yasir Qadhi is simply saying, yeah, trust me, bro, doesn't work. Because that person said something 1,400 years ago. There is nothing I can chase that back. It's not like they even wrote down. That person passed it to someone. That person passed it to someone else. That person passed it to someone else. Now, the very daily Muslim life is just what someone else said to someone else 1,400 years ago.
Yep. And
The big. Sorry, go ahead.
oh yeah, just want to what both you were saying. There were two really big takeaways there. So Hatun pointed out, like what Robert Spencer was saying years ago. Now, oh hey, look, I just wanted to point out, guys, if you go back to like 2005, 2008, or something like that, look at what we were saying back then. To those of us who are there saying stuff, and look at what Muslims were saying back then, and then look at who turned out to be right. Right. So if you go back then, when we would say back then that Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old girl, we were called liars by a bunch of dawah guys. We're liars. Almost the entire Muslim world would call us liars over saying that Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old girl. So we were saying one thing, they were saying the opposite. Who turned out to be right? We did. Back then, they were saying perfect preservation right down to the letter of the Quran. We were saying that's a total lie. Who was proven right? We were saying the scientific miracle stuff is a bunch of nonsense. They even admit that now. And we were saying you got all sorts of problems with Hadith methodology. It's all screwed up. And now you've got Yasir Qadhi admit. Are you guys noticing a pattern? We disagree, and it takes 10, 15, 20 years to argue about this stuff, but we keep getting proven right every single time, and they get proven to be liars every single time. Why do you still trust these guys? Why? If you see this and you see the guys who are telling that these guys are disagreeing and you side with the Muslims because you're a Muslim, and who turns out to be a liar 100% of the time? Your guys. Your da'is, they turn out to be, your scholars, they turn out to be the ones lying. Why does this not bother you? The fact that it doesn't bother the ummah, it just looks like you guys like love lies and you just prefer the lies. And we've got ample confirmation of that, because whenever someone like Yasir Qadhi is forced to tell the truth for 5 seconds, you guys lose your minds. How dare you tell us the truth? We only love lies. It's the kuffar who tell us the truth. Are you kuffar? Are you a kafir now? That's what it looks like. The other thing that I found interesting, like, because AP, you're talking about, this methodology and so on. What's interesting to me is, like, you're right. They cling to this methodology and they think this is the only way to do history. But what's interesting is it's not. This didn't come from Allah. This isn't something that came from Allah or Muhammad or something like this. This is something that later Muslims invented, and you guys take it as foundational to your religion, such that you're a heretic if you reject it. You're a heretic, perhaps an apostate, if you do not accept this man-made methodology. It's some guys who, hey, we got a problem here because we keep making up stories to justify anything we want to believe. Let's come up with a methodology. Hey, let's check the list of names, because obviously, if we think someone could have fabricated a story, there's no way he could fabricate a list of names. So that'll prove that's how we prove that something is authentic. That's something that was invented by human beings, and you take it as foundational to your religion, and you'll blast Yasir Qadhi and call him a heretic for rejecting something that human beings invented. Again, it just didn't come from Allah, didn't come from Muhammad, and it's foundational to your religion. And then you, like Sajid, you don't just make it foundational to your religion, then you make this stupid, idiotic, nonsense methodology foundational to all of history. This is the only way to do history, according to Sajid. It's insane. Go ahead.
Just point out something you said. So Muslims in 900s, late 800s, even it goes to like 1300s. So they didn't kind of sit down and then say, okay, it seems we have some problems right now. We need to figure out actually what Muhammad said. That wasn't their concern. Their concern is, who are the names I can use to justify what I'm telling people or give authority what I am saying. Therefore, they come up with those bunch of names. They were not even curious about whether this is what Muhammad said or what Muhammad did. That's concerning as well.
Yes, and oh, go ahead, AP.
No, finish your thought, because I wanted to talk about how why this whole hadith issue is a very, very big problem, and how it endangers Islam itself eventually. But go ahead, and I'll talk.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out what Hatun just said right there about the hadith methodology. That is exactly what you read from actual academics, like scholars who there are. There aren't a ton of non-Muslim hadith scholars. There's tons of like non-Muslim scholars in Islamic studies and so on. But as far as the actual like hadith guys and so on, yeah, what you had was Islam early on was basically regional. You had sort of different versions of Islam. If you went to Medina, you had kind of one Islam. They had a lot in common. So if you went there, if you went to Kufa, if you went to various regions of the Muslim world, they would have there would be common features. They would have the prayers and stuff like that, but they would significantly disagree on practices and so on. And what happens is, as Islam is expanding and so on, they realize, hey, we need one Islam. They need one Islam. So what happens is, if you're in one city and it could be an issue like mutta, you can go to the hadith, you can go to Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, and you will find in the same hadith collections, with Sahih, all graded Sahih, you'll find some of the hadiths saying that Muhammad allowed mutta, temporary marriage, for a while, and then he forbade it. And so it was forbidden from then on. You'll go to other sources and they'll say Muhammad never outlawed mutta. A later caliph did. And so, well, what's going on there? Well, guess what? Some areas of the Muslim world allowed mutta, other areas of the Muslim world didn't allow mutta. And when they try to come up with what is the official teaching of Islam, they both start making up where they got this from, right? And the tendency, as Hatun pointed out, was to trace it back to some important figure. And at first it's just, oh, I got it from this smart guy, or I got it from that smart guy, and so on. And so the tendency was to keep pushing it back further and further until you eventually got to a companion of Muhammad. But they're just making this up. They're just making these names up. Not making the names up, but they're making up this chain of transmission to connect it to an important companion to show that their story is the correct one. And so later on, when you get the hadith methodology, guess what? People on both sides of an issue are making up lists of names to justify their claim. And so both those lists of names will meet the criteria of a hadith scholar like Bukhari or Imam Muslim. And so they'll both be classified as sahih, even though they contradict each other. And one says, yep, Muhammad said no more mutta. And another, no, we were practicing mutta long after the time of Muhammad and eventually a different caliph. And they're both sahih. And they're telling you something completely different. So that's what's actually going on. And that's why historians who actually look at this, I think this whole system's a joke. It's beyond ridiculous. Muslims, nope, it's the only way to do history. And anyone who doesn't do history like this just doesn't know how history is done the Islamic way.
They're stupid.
All right. So what were you saying, AP?
So there's one thing here, which is that lots of people might not really care about the hadiths and why this is so significant. But the hadiths are you might disregard the hadith and say, oh, okay, the hadith are bad, but you still have the Quran and all that. But there's also a big problem, which we often pointed out when we talked about what's wrong with the Quran-only Muslims, for example. Which is that my point, whenever people ask me about why Quran-only Islam doesn't work, is that in order to qualify or in order to authenticate, to verify the Quran, you have to rely on the hadiths. You can't just have the Quran and say, oh, this is the book that we got, and this is the truth, and everything else is probably not reliable and probably not good and all that. But this is not how Islam works. You could do this if you had, for example, I don't know, if you were Christians, you could treat Christianity, you could treat the Bible in a different way, and rely on tradition and all that. And you can't really do this with Islam, because Islam is very, very clear that it relies on that. This is the main argument. This is the argument that they always make, which is that that the Quran is the only perfectly preserved book ever. It was directly revealed and dictated by Allah without any interference, word for word. We know it for sure, and this is the great miracle, and so on. I'm sorry, you can't have all that if you start doubting the hadiths, which is why if the hadith sciences start falling apart here, right? If the hadith science comes into question, and we eventually come to a place where even Muslims themselves say, okay, you know what, there is no real way to properly affirm the hadiths and affirm their authenticity, affirm the way that we Muslims verify and authenticate the hadith. There is no real way that we can do this. There is no real way we can confirm this. There is no way we can really argue that, and so on. They also have to call the Quran into question, because the Quran is authenticated, is verified, depending on the hadith. The same transmitters that transmit the hadiths are also the ones that transmit the Quran and its contents. The same people who are the same isnad system, right? The same verification, authentication, delivering system of the hadith is also done with the Quran. We know that the Quran that is in use today in its most popular form, or Muslims know that this is the Quran as it was originally revealed, because this is what the transmitters and what the traditions say about the Quran. We don't actually have a proper Quran canon. We only verify the Quran canon with later hadiths. We can only verify how the contents of the Quran as they currently are were compiled by Muhammad's successors through the hadiths. If we don't have these things, if all of these things come into question, if all of this starts getting really, really shaky, and we say, okay, maybe we can't really trust the hadiths, then we also can't really trust the Quran. And that's where Islam falls apart.
Indeed. And so there are multiple ways the Quran falls apart if this hadith system breaks down. One, how do you even know about how the Quran was compiled and so on, and how do you even know where the Quran comes from, where it dates from, and so on? The Quran doesn't say. The Quran gives you details, which you then tie to the hadith, and you can kind of try to pin things down. So there's that. You don't know anything about the origin of the Quran unless you go to the hadith. So you've got that. You don't know the historical background. Tons of Quran passages are answering specific questions, and you don't know unless you go to the hadith, which tells you, oh, we asked this, and therefore this is an answer to that. That tells you what Allah is talking about there. So without that context, you don't know what the Quran means. And then there are things where you have absolutely no clue what the Quran means. It's not even about the historical background of what was being discussed right then. It's you don't know at all what this is about. Like, you have Abu Lahab being condemned, and this guy's going to hell and so on. Well, who's he? Doesn't say. What did he do? Doesn't say. You have no idea who this guy is unless you go outside of the Quran. So you have all kinds of things where I literally have no idea what this is about, who this person is or what he did, without going outside of the Quran. And so you have all those kinds of issues. And then you have all the issues like basic Muslim practices of the vast majority of Muslims, like prayer 5 times a day. Guess what, guys? The Quran mentions 3 prayers. What the Shahada is. You have a kind of Shahada in the Quran. You have there's no God but Allah. But as far as there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger, that comes from the Hadith. Basic Muslim prayer. What do you do on the Hajj? What do? You don't know from the Quran. You get that from the Hadith. So when Yasser Qadhi is going after the Hadith right now, this is like Islam shattering. This is like Islam shattering. And the Dawah guys, they understand this. They understand if he simply casts a little bit of doubt on the Hadith, we are in trouble, because we have been conditioning our fans to just have complete confidence in this methodology. If you realize, wait a minute, actually the methodology is stupid and it's considered a joke and no one in the academic world takes it seriously. What if the Ummah finds that out? It might be almost as bad as finding out that the Quran hasn't been perfectly preserved.
Also, if you think about it, you pointed out that without hadith, they wouldn't know they need to pray 5 times a day, but they wouldn't even know how to do their prayer.
That's
And
true.
you've got Surah 4, verse 64 to 65. Muhammad needs to be the judge of everything. How with like it is sad that we are sitting here and then making case for Sunni Muslims to use against Quran onlys, but without hadith, they wouldn't know how to use Muhammad as judge in everything. Surah 331. Allah, if you love Allah, you follow Muhammad. How do you follow Muhammad? Hadith. Surah 8, verse 12, verse 13. The verse where expresses Allah and his angels are terrorists. And how do you deal with that? Oh, well, if you go, it says like, if you oppose Allah's messenger. So what do you need to know about Allah's messenger so that you don't oppose, that you are not under the terror of Allah and his angels? So they are desperately need hadith. And then Yasir Qadi steps in and then says, guys, by the way, I've been dealing with this conflict for a long time now, but I would like to express that historians are simply discrediting the hadith.
I have to say, this is a really awkward position because both sides are basically right about something, right? So the Quran-only Muslims, they understand the hadith is basically a garbage system, so they're calling it out. The Sunni Muslims understand without the hadith, the Quran falls apart. So it's like either way, we are in all kinds of trouble. This would be like a new Islamic dilemma. Hadith or no hadith, you got to pick one.